was written, composed by another great talent in Lourdes Maglinte, Lay Lay. Ang atong takna karon sa Cebu, alas 10:05 sa kabuntagon, diha sa kaning imuhang kiliran, sa imong kiliran, sa imuhang neck of the woods, Mel. Unsa mang orasa diha ron sa New Zealand?
It's 2:06 p.m.
Wow.
Alas dos sa hapon na.
Kamusta naman ka, Mel? How's everything?
Everything's fine here, peaceful. Early morning was 0 degrees, actually.
0 degrees.
Yes.
Pasabta ko na mi Mel unsay pasabot niya ng 0 degrees in an example nga kaning katong napakadiri sa Pilipinas. I-comparar ko na og something, maybe like a refrigerator or maybe the weather at tops. I don't know. Ikaw ko na explain how it feels like kanang 0 degrees. Go ahead.
The funny thing was that when I was planning to come here sa New Zealand way back in 2005, before that, I had prepared myself actually. So what we did is we had an air conditioner
Okay.
sa kwarto namo. So gibugnaw gid nako. Abot og kanang mga 10 degrees. Aron
Okay.
nga maanad ko.
Okay.
So anyway,
Sa
it's like
sa Pilipinas pa to, sa Pilipinas pa ka to.
sa Pilipinas. So
Okay.
I was thinking so that I can get a costume too.
Okay.
The weather here. But
So-
anyway, when I arrived here, it was November, and supposedly November is still going to summer.
Okay.
That is New Zealand. But then, so I was wearing kanang something which was loose, di ba? But even then, at that time, nga summer bugnaw man gani murag ang tibuok ka lugar air conditioned, no? So paggawas nimo sa airport, murag nag-aircon ang tibuok ka kalibutan.
Okay.
So anyway, ngari karon when you have 0 degrees,
Okay.
of course kanang murag refrigerator gyud, no? When you open the fridge, yan ay freezer nga na, murag yun ana kabugnaw. So like kagabi, we had tulo ka buok kabul, no? Just to make sure nga di ta magkurog-kurog samtang natulog.
So i-like ni mo og naay kaning air conditioning even outdoors.
Yes.
But
yes.
imong air conditioning kutob ra man to sa, I think kanang local air conditioning sa Pilipinas, kutob ra man siya siguro sa 18, di ba?
Ang murag ana
O 18 na kutob. Ni pagkuman zero man imo ha. So dili gyud ka maka ingon nga murag na aircon sa gawas. So maybe
that was during summer. But now murag ka mo open ka og kanang magpalit kag ice cream gani. Ana
Okay.
ka sa kuan, magpalit kag ice cream abli nimo sa kuan tanaw kag Magnolia. Murag ingon ana ang gibugnawon, no? Yes.
mura kag ganing ani sold og refrigerator.
That's right. That's right. And I think it will go down even farther. Mga tingali usay mga negative man na ngari sa mua. But ngari this is the North Island of New Zealand. So dili iti siya bugnaw. We don't have snow here, no? Walay snow ngari. Ato sa South Island tuang snow. And there's a mountain here called Mount Ruapeho.
Okay.
Nga kanang kung agad na snow siya during winter, so people go there. I've gone there already.
Okay.
Sa Mount Protejo, and people kanang mag-skiing, things like that near here.
Okay. So Mel, if you don't mind me asking you, pwede mo i-turn on imong camera if you don't mind. Kini ko ganahan ko kakita si mong gwapong naong da.
Start my video mo tingani da.
Okay. Anyway, Mel, kaning karon of course we all know nga medyo ang ato ang headlines in every single newspaper, every single news organization is talking about the Iran-Israeli war. Di ba murag nagbinausay man sila og tira og mga missiles and so on and so forth. So in a place like New Zealand ba, like how do the Kiwis react to such great tumult, great violence?
Kuan, New Zealand has always been a part of the, well, during the World War II Allied forces because it was once a part of the United Kingdom, and it still is. No,
Mhm.
the head of state of New Zealand is si King Charles. No, so if ever dunay gubat sa World War One o sa World War Two, New Zealand was involved
Okay.
and sent soldiers to fight in the different wars that the United Kingdom fought in the past. Gani, if you go to Auckland, there's a mountain there, Mount Victoria. It's historical because doon ay dako yung canyon ngadto. Unya sa ilawom sa canyon ngadto sa tumoy sa bungtod, doon ay tunnel ngadto and
Mm.
people go there because in World War One and World War Two, they were prepared na tingali unya sila i-invade sila, no?
Mm.
At that time, but layo ra kay New Zealand, so it was never touched either in World War One or World War Two.
Mm.
Now, uh, in this current conflict in Israel and Iran, uh, what pa may official statement ang gobyerno, but definitely they are supportive of whatever is the stand of the United States of America.
Mm.
So, upon they have not sent any soldiers, or have they been involved uh, directly or indirectly with the conflict?
Mm. You know what? There is a kaning global phenomenon now.
Mhm.
More bitaw getting brought about by the internet. Nga everybody knows about everything that's ever happened or is happening in any part of the world, right? Mura og ang atoang mga news bitaw has become globalized, right? Niadto una kung naay gubat sa usa ka corner sa kalibutan, wa man tay kalibutan diri, di ba? Kung naay panghitabo nga violente sa usa ka corner sa kalibutan, wa man tay kalibutan diri kay we're busy with our own set of problems sa ato ang kaugalingon nga naso, di ba? But because of kaning all of this technology, namely the internet and the mobile devices, the cell phones and all of that, ang ato ang consciousness ba, murag we cannot help but think global na. You know what I mean? Like I know I remember having this conversation about nationalism and globalism and all of that stuff. Para nako man good, it just dawned to me that kaning globalism is not even murag a choice anymore. Murag og kaning by default we're actually most of us, at least who have access to all of this technology, are kind of globalists. So ang atong mga balita dili lang unsay nahitabo sa atong iskina, sa atong barangay, sa atong syudad, sa atong nasod, usa po'y pangitabo sa kalibutan, di ba, Mel?
That's true, and sometimes we even know more about what's happening in the world than unsay nahitabo sa atong silingan.
Correct.
Un-
Sakto gina siya.
unless marites ka, no?
Sakto gina siya, Mel. Kay ako I'm a political junkie, especially kaning US politics, right? Unya pag human magstoryanan mi sa akong manghod nga tuwa dito mismo sa Amerika, makaingon sila, how did you know that? Like mas daghan pa tang naibalaan diri usahay, di ba?
That's very correct.
Mm.
Yeah, the world is getting smaller, and kunang in a way we are affected by the what's happening in the other parts of the world.
Mm.
Although not directly, but kung makakita ka sa mga television nga mga nakita nato unsay nahitabo ngadto, the destruction of buildings, the suffering of children, kanang mangyayog pagkaon, ang mga bata nag-ilog sa pagkaon.
Mm.
It's something which murag lisod kay nato if fathom, no?
Mm.
Nga nahitabo din ni sa kalibutan karon
Mm.
in other parts of the world, and we thought that war is already something which is of the past, considering that we had two world wars and many other wars, no? And we have seen the worst of humanity in those wars.
Mm.
And we established the United Nations, and despite the fact war is still going on, di ba?
Yeah, and because of the way the internet is being created, and because of the way the world is now, I don't know which came first now. Whether it is the fault of the algorithms of social media, of the internet, or is it really just a reflection of what's happening with the world. We are forced, in a way, to take sides, di ba? Dili man mahimo nga more neutral ta, di ba? For example, kaning ang kaning Iraq og Iran og kaning Israeli war, right?
Israel.
Of course, we are allies of we are aligned with the United States, for example, di ba? So we are forced in a way to take sides because number one, that's what the internet wants us to do. It wants us to take sides. It was a kind, but in a way, nga, you have to take sides. You can't be just a kaning neutral about it.
That is correct. Yeah, you have to take sides. Not necessarily nga kanang kay kita higala nato ang Amerika, so you have to side with America.
Okay.
And I think kanang people like us who are intelligent, we would like to.
Well, people like you mean?
Go further
People like you.
deeper, no?
Ayaw ko apila na, Mel. Mag-guilty ko na, Mel. Dili ko. Ikaw ra,
We go deeper.
ikaw ra intelligent, Mel. Okay. Okay.
We go deeper into the conflict ngano man ni sila o nganong nag-away man ni sila and what is the cause of the problem.
Okay.
And then when you are able to determine mao ni rason, and so you say that I should be taking the side of this nation rather than the other because of the fact nga kanang sayop man to siyang usa. So, di ba? Kay it's very dangerous kanang like what had happened in World War II that the Germans just said when Hitler said that we should go to war, the Germans just said kadaghanan sa mga youth said eksakto na ang gibuhat ni Hitler, we should side with Germany, we should side with the Nazis, di ba? So very dangerous that so people should have to discern unsa magid ni siyang conflict and is it good for our nation or is it not good?
Yeah, and do we even kaning does it even matter for us in the short term, di ba nga we know all of this. Is this like just useless information? You know, for example, it's not just the war in Iran and Israel. There's also the war between Ukraine and Russia, right? Bag lang sad katong India og Pakistan, di ba? Muraga all of these things, all of these conflicts ba that are happening right now. How do you think should we process it? How should we process all of these things that are going on right now? And does it have anything to do with us at all, or should we just go about like nothing is happening?
So kita, I mean, as an individual, na we are not affected directly, no, by the war, considering that may mga bala na igo nato or missiles ni padong nato sa Pilipinas or sa New Zealand. So we think that it's just what we see in the television or in the internet, no? Maura na atong hunahuna, but in the duna gina epekto nato. Like for instance, we know for a fact that Iran is one of the major suppliers of fuel or oil in the world. No?
Correct.
So it will impact on us eventually, the ordinary people sa presyo sa gasolina. And the presyo sa gasolina musaka.
Sakto
Then
ginamel.
therefore, ang bayranan sa plite musaka. Ang mga cost of goods sa grocery, uban pa, musaka. So indirectly, we will be affected.
Mo ginamel. In fact, when the Iran Israel war broke out, I said, ay mutaas na pa ning gasolina. Tinood good after a few days, and ni-increase by more than 1 peso, almost 2 pesos ang presyo sa diesel o sa gasolina. So in many ways, that actually is a direct effect of the war, di ba? Kay kaning Iran, mura manig oil producing country man ni siya, di ba? Mura man ni siya one of those major players when it comes to fuel. So mo na siya nga maapektuhan kita. Actually, if you think about it, directly magino siya, Mel, di ba, Mel?
Directly na yun.
Mabuta na itong pitaka, di ba?
Ang pitaka naman mo abli. So meaning to say, directly, no, mayroon ka nga layo ra itong gubat apan directly you open your wallet and then you have to pay more for whatever things that you are going to purchase or buy, di ba?
Correct, correct.
So yeah, you are right. It will have an impact on people directly, no?
Kay grabe naman kay ka interconnected magod as a people, as a species, right? So whatever happens lagi in Iran and Israel, mga 40 hundreds of thousands of miles away, still affects us here because of the interconnectivity. Not just through the internet, but the trade routes and the trade agreements and all of that stuff. Mobalik ra gihapon nato kung naigubat masiglayo kayong lugar.
That is correct. And at the same time, while kana siya in terms of kanang economics, no, sa finances sa individual, when you see these pictures and this suffering of people and destruction of buildings, it has an effect on you as a person. Nga magtan-aw gani ka, nga maingon ka, you can ask yourself, but could this also happen to us? Like there are big cities, there are mga condominiums, to nagpuyo ka, ordinaryo, you go on living and suddenly there's a missile that bombs and then people die, di ba? So ikaw mismo maingon ka nga kaluoy nila, no? So emotionally, it also affects each one of us if you see what is happening there.
Absolutely. And the way that we respond to it ba, I know that the topic of this particular episode of our conversation is about the way that art, the way that music responds to times of great tumult, great conflict, great wars, right? And I think that there's three that we know of that are happening right now, and in the forefront right now is the war between Israel and Iran. Kanang atong mga musikero, atong mga artists in general ba, let's kaning telescope out. Let's look at the macro, the bigger picture. How do musicians, how do artists react when in times of great conflict?
Kuana kanang firstly, there are artists who are used by governments, no, for propaganda. Meaning to say that music is used as a tool towards indoctrinating people to a cause, no. So meaning to say that there are marches and songs which steer nationalism. Mauna siya kuyaw kay people may be indoctrinated into doing something because they believe that it is the truth, di ba? So like during the Nazi regime in Germany, music, marches and films were kanang made mga propaganda to say that the German people, the Aryan race, is a superior race, and other races are kanang are lower in the lower echelon of society, and that the Jews were evil people. So propaganda, art, music was being used, film was being used. Hani sa Pilipinas, you were not born in 1971, 72, no? Wala pa ka matawag
Oh, 2005 naman ko, Mel.
Kabata ba din mo? Anyway,
abdi kayo.
I was there. I mean, I was in high school when martial law was declared, and most radio stations were closed,
Okay.
except a few which were government owned or gisudlan sa gobyerno, no? And then ang amo ra madungog ato is kanang bagong lipunan anthem. Mabuhay, mabuhay, mabuhay ang Pilipino. Maunay gitukar every kanang maminaw ka sa radyo, balik-balik na siya. So in a way, music and art were being used at the time, no, sa pag-take over ni Marcos during the dictatorial regime to indoctrinate people that everything was needed, martial law was needed in order to kanang fight against the threat of communism at the time. So in one way, music can be used or can be abused, no, by people who have kanang mga dunay vested interest
Mhm.
and who wants to take power over a group of people or a nation.
Okay.
So that is one. But on the other side, there are also people who go against the regimes, no, dictatorial regimes or authoritarian regimes or nations going to war. And after World War II, I don't know if you're aware of the Cold War.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Familiar?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah. The U.S. and Russia, right?
that's right.
Mm.
The Cold War came into being because the world was going to be divided between capitalism. It was not about democracy
Mm.
and communism. It
Mm.
was about capitalism and communism. So na-divide ang kalibutan, and then one side was the Americans and their allies, and then Russia and China and their allies. That was the Cold War. So ang nahitabo ni adto is in America. I don't know if you're aware of Charlie Chaplin, no? Si Charlie Chaplin was banned from America. He was kicked out of America because of his movies, which were kanang against mura siya dunay nagtuo sila nga he was trying to promote communism.
Mhm.
And there were other artists who were blacklisted during the time
Mm.
uh, in the Cold War because McCarthy, Senator McCarthy of the United States, was going through Hollywood and uban pa nga he thought that they were trying to make America a communist state.
That was called
And
McCarthyism, right?
yes,
Mm.
and there were artists who did not like this,
Mhm.
and one of that was Pete Seeger.
Mm.
Pete Seeger was an American folk singer, and he wrote songs about kanang protecting people, freedom, democracy, ug uban pa. And he was blacklisted. He was blacklisted during the time of McCarthy,
Mhm.
and he emerged again during the time mga 1950s nga murag nahinay na to ang Cold War, and then he started and had an impact on other protest singers like Bob Dylan.
Mm.
Have you seen the film katong recent film of about Bob
A
Dylan?
complete unknown. Yes, absolutely. I loved it.
Yeah. Did you see that person who was in the hotel in the hospital?
Ah, yes. Was that him?
That was Pete Seeger.
Oh, okay. I remember now. Yeah, that was Pete Seeger. Si
So
nibisita si Kuan si Bob
Bob
Dylan.
Dylan.
Yeah.
Yes. So Pete Seeger was an artist who composed kana mga songs which were kanang protesting. No, he was protesting. He was pro-environment when it was not yet kanang sikat pa ang the
Dili pa to
word
en vogue,
environment.
dili pa to uso.
Dili pa uso. And then he was also against because that was going towards during the Vietnam War,
Mhm.
mga 1959 to 1963, 65.
Mm.
He was writing songs. He was writing protest songs,
Okay.
and I think this is where Bob Dylan came in. Blowing in the Wind.
Mm.
So
Yes, of
blowing in
course,
the
yeah.
wind and other songs of Bob Dylan were actually protest songs. And this is when there was a consciousness among musicians that pwede man di ay nga mo himog mga kanta about social issues.
Mhm.
Because in the 50s and even earlier 40s or kato mga 30s, mga kuanra ang mga songwriters were hired to write romantic songs about love, etc. etc. Mutos lang mga Nat King Cole, Frank
Mm.
Sinatra, mga puros mga Pat Boone, mga kanta nga mga gihimo og gisuwat nga talking about love, etc. kanang magbuwag ana gani.
Mm.
But then he was Bob Dylan, he was Pete Seeger. They started writing songs about what they saw around them,
Mhm.
about the environment, about people, about social causes.
Mhm.
And so that's the time when people realize, or musicians and artists realize, that music has power
Mm.
over social issues that affect people.
Mm.
Yeah,
You know what, Mel, because of the kaning again, because of a lot of these things that we're talking about have to do with technology. In fact, this conversation that we're having now would not have been possible without technology, Zoom technology to be exact, right? Because you're out there in
that's right.
New Zealand, we're here in the Philippines, right? I'm in Cebu. Kana bitong war coverage bitaw? Kana bitong magtanaw ka sa kaning CNN, for example, or Fox, nga mag-cover sila sa gubat bitaw na war correspondent and all of that stuff. So you get to see gid bitaw the brutality, the damage, the wanton destruction of war. So kita dili na nato lang theoretical nga ato pang i-imagine, makakita kita in our with our own two eyes, the ravages of war, the destruction of war, which is very indiscriminate.
That's correct.
Mm.
Yeah, technology has allowed us to see that, no?
I'm
And
talking about that while you were talking about kaning katong mga artists, because ang ato ang kaning vivid na bitaw ang ato ang dili ta mag-imagine, kinahanglan mag-imagine bitaw
yeah,
sa
yeah.
gubat bitaw. So I'm curious ba, in times of conflict, obviously in the United States, most of the artists, like you mentioned, silang Frank Sinatra and company, they were making love songs. But this guy Bob Dylan and Peter Seeger and a few other artists, si Joan Baez, I think was one of those
That's
two,
right. Yeah.
started writing about not necessarily about love, although they did have love songs, but they also talked about what is happening in the world around them. Diba, Mel? Naghisgot man ta nga, usually music comes from a place of great suffering, great pain, great kaning displeasure,
That's
uncomfortableness, and
right.
all of that stuff. Karon, Mel,
Mm.
we're living through. Thank goodness, not in our backyard. We're living through three wars that are happening in India and Pakistan, Ukraine and Russia, and right now Israel and
Iran.
Iran. Like, how do you assess, has it manifested itself in the world of art? Na ba kay makitaan, Mel, in this day and age, or katuratong panahon na ni ni Bob Dylan nga na inato mga klase nga tao karon, people really don't care. They don't give a rat's ass
Yeah.
about what's happening with the world today, and they don't actually make art out of what they see out there.
Yeah. As of the moment, I have not seen any kanang artwork, no, or kanang music coming out of artists relating to what is happening now. But I'm pretty sure that there are artists whom we fail to listen to.
Okay.
There may be local artists who are struggling at this time nga to sa ilang nasod,
Mm-hmm.
and probably they may be writing about what they're feeling at the moment,
Okay.
but probably because of lack of nangaguba ang mga studio, di
Mm-hmm.
ba?
Mm-hmm.
Or they have no place to send out their messages,
Mm-hmm.
and the focus of the media is on the actual war,
Okay.
and they are not concerned at the moment of people making art
Mm.
or making music in relation to war.
Mm.
So focus kaya ang mga media, ana. Although there are people who are doing protests, no?
Mm.
And I'm pretty sure that during these protests, there are artists who are joining in these protests, and a part of the protest is always the singing of songs. And I'm pretty sure that some of these artists who are attending these protests against war, they are singing songs of freedom, of democracy, songs for peace. Like, of course, the anthem mostly sa kung mag-peace rally gani is in Western countries is "Imagine" by John Lennon.
Yeah.
That has always become the current
Yeah.
murag peace anthem sa kadaghanan ng mga
Murag
artists.
wa pa naka-replace ang kantahada. Dugay-dugay na 70s pa na, di ba?
That is correct. Yes. So yeah. So I'm pretty sure there are artists, and sometimes songs come out after the war, no, about unsay nahitabo during the war and the struggles nila. But sadly, kanang for the moment, I have not heard like Ed Sheeran, Taylor Swift, Olivia Rodrigo, or some other artists singing about peace or wanting peace, no?
Mm-hmm.
Which is quite sad. I mean, these artists who are known have a voice
Mm-hmm.
in the world, and people listen to them. The youths listen to them, and if probably they're afraid, no? Usahay ka ng, when you speak out about a certain, you stand for a certain kanang cause, sometimes you will be in hot waters.
Mm-hmm.
Most na sila, and I think sometimes commercialism and artist, being an artist, sometimes kana siya, one has to struggle between those two.
Yeah. So
Diba?
are you suggesting that we have a generation of cowards?
In a sense, most probably because they're not saying anything, no? Except, I mean, this is on the other side. Neil Young. You're familiar with Neil Young,
Absolutely.
right?
Rust never sleeps.
Neil Young was in the in England, no, the concert siya nga to recently. Likewise, the Bruce Springsteen also were there, and they were singing not against. They had a different issue, which was Donald Trump. No, so they were singing songs about the danger of authoritarianism going into in the United States, and they were singing about unsa namaning mga nahitabo sa Amerika, anti-immigration. Immigrants are being kicked out without due process. So these are some brave people, Neil Young, Bruce Springsteen. But the more popular artists, no, they're not at the moment, no, they're not saying anything.
Wow. So I'm sure there are people out there, but we have to seek them out, right? Who are making any shape or form of art. But I think one of the most important artworks in times of tumult is really photographers, right?
Mm,
Diba?
that's another one.
Moment is like out there in the battlefield taking pictures, showing to us what's really happening on the ground.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember one of the worst wars in modern history is the Vietnam War. No, and there was a photographer who took a picture of this while Saigon was being bombed. A girl who was naked, young girl, naked, running naked, away from the war. No,
Okay.
naa siya sa dan, and you can see the agony on her face, and that was one of the most kanang a picture of what war is, no? And that girl, the photographer was able to take that picture. In For many years later, realized that that girl survived and lived in the United States, migrated to the United States, and she met the photographer, and a sort of a reunion. But yes, photographers take the risk of taking pictures of the suffering of people and agony of people during war. That's still an artwork as well.
Yeah. So daghang kaayog mga photographs nga nahimog iconic artworks, right? In many ways, because of the wars or the conflicts that these photographers were able to
Yeah.
witness in their own eyes, front and center of where the real action is happening. So I guess that's really one of the most impressive forms of art, photography. But Mel, in recent history, like mga war themed or anti-war themed songs are abound, right? For example, kanang si Sting, di ba? Talking about the Cold War, di ba? He wrote a song called Russians, di ba? It was about
Yeah, yeah.
he was about the Cold War, di ba? And
That
Rush
is right.
had a song called Manhattan Project. It was about
Mm-hmm.
Oppenheimer and
Yeah,
the building of the
people
atomic
had a
bomb, di ba?
nuclear bomb.
So
That's right.
there are war themed songs, almost as if warning us not to do it again, or let's not go back to
Yeah.
that time. But
There, mm, there were songs. Um, wa na kay ko ka follow up on the songs of modern kanang mga after mga 70s 80s gani
okay.
ng mga artists nga coming out with songs.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't heard songs about the Afghan War or
Mm.
the Korean War, but it was the Vietnam War actually nga kanang daghang kining gawas kay because that was also the time of the hippies.
Okay.
So 60s, let's make love, peace, not war, di ba?
Mm-mm.
That was the slogan.
Yeah.
So that was when many anti-war songs came about,
Mm-hmm.
like not a Universal Soldier.
Mm-hmm.
No, that was one song, and then one of the best songs is kang Pete Seeger actually was "Where Have All the Flowers Gone."
Mm.
Long time passing, di ba?
Mm.
Where have all? Are you familiar with the song?
I'm not very familiar with that song.
Anyway, that is a very nice song. No,
Mm.
try to listen to it privately, and you will see that it talks about the uselessness of war.
Mm.
No, and then of course another one which is doon na pa'y kuan Masters of War na kanta, and of course there was Edwin Starr, a black artist, who sang the song War,
Mm.
and I think kaning war, what's it good for? Absolutely nothing. No, and I think if you have seen the movie katong si Jackie Chan o si I forgot this black artist actor, and that was one of the songs that war. What's it good for?
Ah.
Absolutely nothing.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So
And
even I remember Culture Club had a song called War. War is stupid.
war stupid.
The war.
War is
Yeah.
stupid.
And
That
obviously,
was
I mean, like, like, obviously, all of these songs have not taught us anything, right? Imagine has not really taught the world anything. There are still all of these wars happening right now, but
yes.
and I think we need more of these kinds of artists.
One thing, another way of showing kanang support against war is supposedly kanang concerts, no? Concerts
Mm.
are very important. The gathering of artists who are against war.
Okay.
I haven't seen in so far, no? Ang ako na duman lang ng mga concerts in the past, no? Was a concert for Bangladesh nga George Harrison was the one who organized it.
Mm.
But the concert for Bangladesh was more about raising funds because Bangladesh at the time was at war with Pakistan,
Mm.
but at the same time had a devastating flooding.
Mm.
No, so mo to nga he raised money there.
Mm.
There was also Band Aid, which was with Bob Geldof.
Mm.
But that concert was in relation to raising funds for Africa,
Mm.
and together also with USA for Africa, kay Michael Jackson or Lionel Richie. These were more of a war against poverty.
Mm.
But
And famine, right?
yes,
And I
but
think much of the famine also because Africa is also a war torn nation continent, right? So
that's right.
in a way,
So
that was still in the midst of great conflict.
yes, and another one is the gathering of artists. Katong No Nukes, I remember that.
Mm.
No Nukes with James Taylor, onya si Carly Simon led that one. Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young,
Mm.
and of course the greatest show on earth that showed the defiance to war was Woodstock.
Mhm.
Woodstock was a gathering of I know it's almost 1 million people. That
Mm.
was New York, and then they were singing. They were actually saying "love, make love, not war,"
Mhm.
and it was more of a protest against the war in Vietnam,
Okay.
the involvement of the USA in the war in Vietnam. So, but the sad thing there is this, no? People go to war, and then it ends up that nag-away ang Vietnam, ang Vietcongs against the US. and the US was defeated.
Mm.
And a few years later, America was investing money in Vietnam,
Mm-hmm.
and Americans are visiting there, and Filipinos are going to Vietnam, right?
Mm.
And during that time, we were involved in PhilCog,
Mm.
involved in the war in Vietnam.
Mm.
So, gan mag-away pa man ta nga eventually mag-amigo ra man gid dayta.
Or you don't have to. Another side of the world, the United States bombed the crap out of Japan, right, in Nagasaki, right?
That's
And
right.
if eventually
Yeah,
they became actually in many ways really close friends as nations. So I guess
that's right.
it could also be that's the reason why they're friends because they murag bang iba ang may pinagsamahan ba?
Nausab ang ilang mentality
Mm.
towards instead of militarization and conquering of
Yeah.
other
But
countries,
Mel,
they realize
I
that
notice Mel ba nga ang musicians karon mga panahon na dili na kaayo sila vocal when it comes to kaning great conflict, great tumult, great kaning tragedies ba murag dili na kayo ta moved by it. Could it be because we see that almost on a daily basis all of these things that are being reported by news organizations around the globe that we are numbed by it nga murag dili na kayo thought provoking nato so thought provoking that it forces us to make some kind of output, maybe like an artwork, a painting, a song,
yeah.
or a limerick, or a poem, or whatnot. Do you think it's because we are collectively just being numbed by all of this?
That's one possibility because ang kalibutan has always been at war. The nations have always been at war.
Mm,
Murag why hunong ang gubat,
mm,
no?
mm.
So probably that's one reason nga murag why sing about against war when it's a thing that is always happening,
Correct. Yeah.
no?
You know what?
So
You know what, Mel?
yeah, probably you are right there.
You know what, Mel? Kaning sa ato walang own backyard. Let's talk about the Philippines. But we've always had this perception. There's always like an ongoing uh, conflict in Mindanao. Diba? That's one of our forever wars also, right? And
Mhm.
did we have any great music? Did Freddie Aguilar make a song about the conflict in
Yes, yes,
Mindanao,
yes.
if I remember
Freddie
correctly?
Aguilar made songs on Mindanao.
Okay.
Also, the more vocal one was actually Asin,
Okay.
no? Because the Asin, the composers of Asin, Lolita Carbon,
Okay.
the female singer, is I think a Tagalog, no?
Okay.
But ang iyang mga kauban, katong mga composer, the real ones who wrote the songs, were kanang taga Cotabato,
Okay.
no? So muna nga dunay kantang Cotabato, Bayang Sinilangan, at there are songs about Mindanao actually.
Mm-hmm.
Kanang yeah, so dunay kanta sa mga asin nga which addressed those conflicts in Mindanao.
Mm-hmm.
And I will tell you this na one of the songwriter of Asin was actually killed,
Oh,
no?
okay. Okay.
That was sa Cotabato.
Mm.
You know how that happened?
Nga naman.
Kini siya I forgot his name, but he was a composer. Not to siya it was not due because of the conflict. He was inside a restaurant, a bar. Naglingkod siya ngadto, naminaw siya sa nagkanta. And then nakitaan siya sa one of the customers there, probably a big kanang sikat tingali or army baka
Mm.
na tao nga niingon, uy, naaman si Koan. Di ba sa asin man ka?
Mm.
Yeah. Kanang kanta nga to be kanta. Of course, he refused, no?
Mm.
Okay, he was just a customer there. But because he refused, gipusil siya and he was killed.
Really now?
Yeah,
Oh my God.
that's a fact.
True story?
True story. Yeah,
Wow.
you can search on that.
Okay.
So it's quite sad.
Mm.
People who pursue peace, no? I mean, another good example is John Lennon. di
Yeah.
ba?
Yeah.
John Lennon was a hippie. He
Mm.
was always wanting for peace,
Mm.
and then look at him. He was killed. He was shot.
Yeah.
So sometimes when you make a stand for peace, sometimes it might be dangerous. No,
Mm.
you can be in conflict with people who have a different agenda.
Mo lagi. So Mel, because of all of these things, do you think we are a generation of cowards and we don't really care about what's going on anymore? We just write about the easy and comfortable things
Yeah,
that are around us and no longer minding what's happening with the world at large.
yeah. I think there are artists who are just out there, no, probably writing. So, ako, I write songs every now and then in
Mm.
relation to whatever is happening in the world, no.
Mm.
But it's a song which I wrote and I sing in my home, no.
Okay.
So going out and bringing the song out is a different thing, because of the you have to spend money also if
Mm.
you're
Mm.
an artist.
Mm.
Unlike in the old times, na a tribe is at war or wanting peace with the other, they sing about peace within their tribe.
Mm.
Diba? But karon, you have to put it into a record. And
Mm.
who would play it anyway? No, nobody would want to play a song about war, anti-war.
Mm.
Unsa man na?
Mm.
Uh, it cannot be included in the playlist.
Mm.
That's to kanang dunay uban masuko ini inyong
Mm.
kanta kay
Mm.
it's something which is
But isn't that the point of music though nga although na kay gihisgutan nga particular thing moment and time but mura siya because it's an artwork, it's in a kind of art form, let's just say music or painting or even poems and even books, right, fictional books, right, mura man na siya gi cloak gi imong disguise ba ang imuhang mensahe in a song, right?
that's
So,
right.
for example, let's see, no, Jose Rizal, No Limit Angere, El
That's right.
Filibustrismo, he did not, he was like a peaceful person in many ways, right? That's why
Mm.
nagingon sila, that's why Jose Rizal became our national hero versus Bonifacio because this Bonifacio was kind of a
Revolutionary.
revolutionary. He really wanted a war, and in the meantime, Jose Rizal just wrote books, etc., etc. Diba?
That's right.
Importante kaayo nga ang kanang music supposedly it doesn't have to being imong precisely mention specifics ba. Are you saying, Mel, nga some of these songs actually mention the protagonists in their narrative by name?
No. Usually kining mga kanta kining mga kanta ni Bob Dylan, no? Or ni Pete Seeger, they don't it's just the idea
Mhm.
of having of peace.
Okay.
It's the idea of the brutality of war.
Mm.
Unsa may results of war.
Mm.
They didn't name anything about Vietnam, Viet Congs, or the president of America or
Mm.
anything.
Mm.
It was just the idea of what what peace is. My song will express something about we need peace.
Mhm.
War is brutal.
Mm.
So you put it in the lyrics, but you don't say, kanang against ko ni. I don't have to say si Hitler is bad.
Mm.
I don't need to do that,
Mm.
'di ba? But it's just the idea of what we want, what a
Mm.
person wants in relation to uh, war and in relation to achieving peace.
So ngano ka nga it's dangerous for artists to write songs of peace, songs about war, when in fact they're masking their message in a song or in a painting. It's not really very direct. Nganong mahadlok man ta mo express.
Kuan tingali because of sometimes when you side with things which are when you take sides in any conflict, you are bound to have enemies,
Okay.
no? So most probably some artists are just wanting to be on the safe side,
Mm.
di ba?
Okay.
They want to be on the safe side. Di lang ta manghilabot ni ana.
Uh-huh.
Kay kuan kanang like a good example is actually Elvis Presley, for
Okay. What
instance.
about?
Elvis was wanting to be involved in the civil rights movement in America,
Okay.
no? But his manager said, ayaw, don't get involved in politics.
Mm.
Don't get involved because that will destroy your
Mm.
image,
Mm.
and you will have enemies, and
Mm.
your fans will be turned off if you start talking about it.
Mm.
No, so Elvis couldn't do anything because the manager said so.
Mm.
But then Elvis, in his little ways, just like Frank Sinatra,
Mm.
when black artists were confined to karso sa hotel unya ikahuman at tuon sa pikas nga boarding house kay they are not allowed to stay in the hotel
Mm.
to rest or
Mm.
mag-standby adto sa pikas.
Mm.
But then some artists like si Elvis o si Frank Sinatra,
Mm.
they said that I will not perform. One time si I think Nat King Cole was it. Ingon si Frank Sinatra, I will not perform in this hotel in Las Vegas
Mm.
if you will not let Nat King Cole perform here.
Mm.
So
Nat King
in
Cole,
their little
who's an
ways,
African American artist, diba?
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So what I'm saying is that they don't have to say it kanang through their songs,
Mm.
no?
Mm.
It's through their
Mm.
actions
And and
that
and
they
and
do it.
and I think the commodity of all artists, not just musicians, not just painters, but in all different genres. In fact, I think the biggest commodity here is really your influence, diba? Okay,
That's right.
if you say something and people listen to it and people uh, uh, act on it, then that's where your power comes from, diba?
Sa mo nang challenge na to ni
Mm.
Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
You know, Taylor Swift is a very influential person
Correct.
at
Yeah.
the moment,
Yeah.
right?
Mm.
If she would write a song about peace instead of her
Mm-hmm.
romances, di ba?
Yeah.
Then probably people will sit down and listen.
Yeah.
And then,
Correct. Yeah.
oh, yeah,
Yeah. Well,
so
if you think about it, Taylor Swift actually has a lot of socially uh, conscious songs.
songs.
Daghan man kayo, not necessarily about war or peace. For
Yeah,
example,
yeah,
kanang the feminist movement, di ba kanang iyang kanta nga The Man, di ba? That's about
yeah.
how it's a patriarchy and all of that stuff. So Taylor Swift does have songs.
Yes,
In
socially
her
conscious
defense,
songs.
because my daughter is not here. Kaninga, kaninga,
If she would write about peace
yeah.
and against war,
Yeah.
then that would be
Well,
even
it's funny that you mentioned Taylor Swift because Taylor Swift did not during the last elections of the United States, wherein a woman ran for president.
mhm.
Kaning because
Si Kamala.
see Joe Biden sort of like stepped down, right? And Kamala Harris was thrust into the limelight months before the actual elections. Taylor Swift actually had a lukewarm support, although she did mention it, but it wasn't full support. So murag nahadlok siguro siya ato nga medyo basig kay
Yeah.
murag apiki man to
Once you
si
become partisan,
yeah, paapiki man to si Kamala ato niya paghuman kung napildi si Kamala, which actually happened. Maybe it'll be detrimental to her career, di
her
ba?
career.
Yeah.
And and
Mm.
actually, Donald Trump was had attacked Taylor Swift
Correct, correct,
lately, di ba?
correct, correct. So kaninga I guess if you're as widely accepted as Taylor Swift, mora og if you and you have all that power and influence, I think what happens is nga kuyawan ka nga half of your following will disappear because of you showing murag a kind of bias, or you support a particular tribe, a particular group, instead of not supporting anything, right? So that is, I think, a kind of I venture in
Dilemma.
saying I venture in saying a kind of selfish career move. Ng imong gihuna-huna dili ang imuhang paminaw pamati nga insakto, among gihuna ang imuhang karir nga naapa ba ko ani kung mosuporta ko ani aning pagtuon ako nga insakto, di ba?
That's right.
It is kind
So,
of selfish, right? Would you agree with me?
yeah, I mean,
Mm.
I would even venture to say that artists who stand for a cause are brave artists,
Mm,
no?
mm, mm,
Like, even in elections,
mm.
uh, sometimes you need to take a stand
Okay.
on a candidate, di
Correct.
ba?
Yeah.
But sometimes, because if you take a stand for a candidate, that means you are a brave person.
Okay.
Instead of just kanang leaving it, kamo na bahala na,
Mm.
wala ko'y labot ni ana.
Mm.
And you will have to take the kanang the backlash, no?
Uh-huh.
Should let's say the candidate that you supported fail to make it,
Mhm.
or kato mga fans nimo nga dili gusto sa imong gisuportahan,
Mm.
there can be a backlash on you.
Mhm.
But that's where a person who is idealistic
Uh-huh.
will come into nga okay ni siya,
Mm.
ni barog yun siya sa iyang prinsipyo.
Mm.
But very few artists would want to venture into that, no?
Mm. You know what, Mel? Speaking of artists ba, naa si Justin Narvios karon sa ato ang linya. Let's invite her over for a little bit
Yeah, please
and
do.
ask her to say a few words. Hello, good morning. Dihan mo Justin.
Hi, Jiggy. Top of the morning. Hi, Sir Mel.
Naminaw ka sa mong
Hello.
gipang hisgutan, Justin?
Yeah, I really like the topic today.
Okay.
So, now.
Okay. Do you have anything to add with this conversation about the role of music, the role of artists in times of great tumult?
Wow, I like that. Role of artists in time of great, what did you say?
Tumult, conflict, war. Yeah.
Conflict and
Yeah,
war.
uh.
And I think that the relevance of artists making songs that are bold and that have themes that are sometimes uncomfortable. It's something that stays important even without war in particular, like with ongoing social issues. So I'm so glad that this is our chosen topic for today. And I was able to think of some artists off the bat when you talked about artists who are unafraid to speak their truth. And pero mostly these are Western artists, and I think I can say that because their culture good is because very democratic. At the same time, they kind of encourage that also. I think maybe the way I see it is artists over there have more like leeway and freedom to make controversial art, even in music and their performances. So when Sir Mel was talking about, you were also talking about Taylor Swift. I was immediately reminded of like Kendrick Lamar, for example. Artists like Kendrick Lamar and Kanye West were very bold with their messages, their performances. No, Childish Gambino. But I remember, I think early last year, or end of last year, or was that early this year? There was that particular performance in the Super Bowl where Kendrick Lamar was blatantly exposing no kanang the dark side of Hollywood, particularly the story ni Drake and how Drake was actually a pedophile, and like everyone's doing that now. Childish Gambino for several years already created music that's like low-key anti-Trump, and then we have the like other artists through their music. A lot of rap artists were exposing like Diddy nowadays. I think it's great that at least in the West, that's something that's widely accepted because people latch onto that man. It does create clout. It does get people's attention, particularly for that community, like an amount community, people of color. Sa Philippines nga context, it was hard for me to do some research, and I would admit, Jiggy and Sir Mel, a lot of these artists that I found that are a little bit like their music is quite political. I've not really heard of them, so I think that's just a reflection of how maybe I'm not exposed siguro gyud to the artists here locally that are very or unafraid to show that they have a political agenda in there. So a lot of these are on this list that I found out kay murag ni kay ko I just heard of them now. A lot of these rappers. So pero one stood out to me because aside from making music for propaganda, I think that part of the propaganda that people try to promote would also be to strengthen cultural identity. So ang nigawas ani nga list that I am familiar with is Ben and Ben. So as an indie folk pop local group, Ben and Ben, their music is very poetic. It engages with nationalistic themes. So they have songs that talk about like anti-tyranny, mga pro-accountability, stuff like that. But mental health also, they had a
Is there a particular song from Ben and Ben that has those social themes?
yeah, so they've got a song called Kapangyarihan featuring SB19
Okay.
in 2022. It was actually released during the 2022 elections, and it was like hinting themes of anti-tyranny, and because it's literally called kapangyarihan.
And I think one of my favorite songs about inequality is a song called Tatsuluk by Bamboo, right? I mean, that's also a song about the growing inequality in our Philippine society context, right? So daghan mga kanta din diha nga is really putting the spotlight on certain social issues, right?
Ari sa Cebu, Jiggy,
Okay.
during the time of martial law, si Manila Pincao, no, wrote songs about Kalinaw Damgo na lang ba ikaw was one of the songs that he wrote, no. So he wrote those songs, but he had an independently uh, released album. So wag na siya madungog sa radyo, no. Then there's a group called Anak Pawis from Compostela, ang mga Wagas brothers.
Okay.
They had an album which had social messages, themes, no. Mo ni usa sa membro nila si Rolly Wagas, who still sings songs, no, about the environment, about freedom, and even Okaraga, no, kanang Bagani is a good example of a song which talks about being, to love your country, being a hero, and standing for your right. So doon naghapon, no? And in a way, it's a commercially viable nga mamina ang mga tao.
Yeah, so mao lagi, Mel, I think there are those we have to seek them out, right? Dili gyud kay siya out there in the forefront, right? Like murag ato pang pangitaon, di ba? Ang mga kanta nga naghisgot og mga inana nga klase nga social issues. And we because we believe, I believe, I don't know if you guys agree with me, nga kanang music art really comes from somewhere, murag a great tragedy, great emotion, great heartache, di ba? Pero kadaghanan sa ato mga artists, they really write about mostly about great heartache, di ba? Not but we're talking about romantic heartache. You know what I mean? Not loss because of a war or something to that effect.
Yeah. So it's a challenge to local artists, no?
Yeah.
To write songs about social issues, because sometimes these are things that are often kanang disregarded by artists kaya it's not commercially viable, but probably people want to hear their thoughts as well.
And I do hear
on social issues.
I do hear songs about the drug war. I do hear songs about that. I cannot pinpoint a particular song right now at the top of my head, but makadungog mo ko in our playlist right now there are songs about drug war
some of those songs,
that are pro or anti, diba? So I think it's just there in the periphery lang gid siguro, dili siguro in the forefront. I mean these guys probably are maybe don't have as much support as they would want to have if they talk about something specific and something that's a very divisive issue. Murag maniguro na sila nga, nga basig ako mga fans, mga wagtang tungod sa akong gipangsulti sa akong mga kanta.
Yeah, that's. I think there's always that risk, no, when these artists they're always risking siguro their fan base, the change in demographic when they also have a message that's quite strong. Some fans might find their work to be too radical, and then they don't want to support na, like it's too serious, it's not for mainstream. I also remember there was this group that my mom introduced me to. It was actually the first guy and girl, or how would you say it, co-gender? I don't know how they say it, like guy and girl group in the Philippines. Started that even before the Koreans did. Even before K-pop industry had guy and girl groups, we had our very own. Smoky Mountain in the 1990s.
Correct, yeah.
Smoky Mountain. They had this one song my mom told me about. It's called Paraiso. It's mostly about the environment, diba? And it was nice how at the time in the early 90s with the rise of plastic and the news, people were slowly accepting climate change and like the ozone and all that. I mean, it was still a debate though at that time. People would deny it. And we have a youth group, a bunch of kids talking about environmental
well, the name of the band itself is Smoky Mountain is a
much to trash,
is about an actual specific actual place that is
Smoky Mountain was
yeah.
a group formed by Ryan Kayabyab, actually.
Correct, yeah.
And one of the one of the members there is actually in Cebu, no? Nasa
Wow.
Cebu. Her name is now as Zulueta. Namin niyo siyang Zulueta.
Okay.
But she was a member of Smoky Mountain.
Mm.
Oh, that's so cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So yeah,
But
it is a challenge to all of our artists out there to be more socially relevant, right? And talk about not just about your personal heartaches or heartaches of other people when it comes to your failed love or whatever it is. You can also talk about the collective heartaches that we're all feeling when we look at images of war in Iran and in Israel or in Ukraine and Russia or Palestine, Pakistan, in India, and so on and so forth. I think we should also include that when we develop whatever it is that we're thinking about for a song or two, right? Don't you think so too, Justin? You're an artist yourself. How does that factor in? Do you feel strongly about what you see in CNN on in Fox, or have you been numbed by what you see on television because you see it on a daily basis?
yeah, I do think that there's a possibility, and I've experienced it also. I have been numb over time. You see bad news every day, and when you write a song, it's like that's the first thing that definitely comes to your mind. I'm gonna
Uh-huh.
write more,
Okay.
or I'm gonna write about like the agonies of society as a whole. But I think it's important that if you're gonna create art, whether in whatever form that will be,
Mm-hmm.
that you insert somewhat like a cause that's good.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I'm happy na the very first song I wrote that I released when I was even independent before I was in Viva
Okay.
was really related to mental health. And
Okay.
I was so happy that because of you, Gigi, I
Okay.
really had a platform to have that song played around in Cebu and then release it. And yeah, I remember at that time it was really I mean, I was trying the goal in that first song was to somehow shed light to people who might feel a little bit hopeless, and it was inspired by a friend of mine who was really having a hard time with mental issues,
Mm.
and the reality of it being an illness, literally something that ails people.
Mm.
That is,
You know what? You,
so
you you guys are both artists, right? Both of you write and sing and all of that stuff. Tell me this, because I'm confused now, and maybe the both are true. The role of art, especially your genre, which is music, is it to distract ourselves from our realities, our sad and tragic realities, or is it to put the spotlight on them in the first place? What is the role of art in society? Because starting with you, Mel.
The role of the artist in a society is to express how you feel on what is happening to society.
Okay.
Sometimes it's most artists write about what they feel about another person, so they write love songs, diba?
Mm-hmm.
But then it's not to cover up unsa may the reality.
Mm.
The truthful artist is the one who writes about what is reality.
Mm.
Diba? Unsa may naa sa atong environment, no?
Mm.
Like for instance, me when I was involved with NAMFREL during the snap presidential election way
Okay.
back 1985.
Okay.
Uh, Actually, I wrote a song called "Light a Candle,"
Okay.
and it came from an experience that I had before the elections. See, Cardinal Vidal was there in the USC Girls High Auditorium,
Mm-hmm.
and then a lot of us volunteers ngadto naglingkod sa ubos, no? And he was there on ngadto sa taas with other priests and other leaders, no? And suddenly the light, no, of the auditorium was turned off, murag blackout, and then we saw Cardinal Vidal light one candle, and then Cardinal Vidal shared the light of the candle to the other people who were there in front of the stage,
Mm.
who were on stage. And these people on stage went down, and each of us had also our own candles.
Mm-hmm.
And our candles were lit, and the entire auditorium was lit and became bright. with all of us having these lighted candles, and it all started with just one candle. So that had so much impact on me that I actually wrote a song, and
What is the song?
eventually
What is the song?
light a candle.
Okay.
It is better to light a candle
Where is
than
it
to
now?
curse
How
the
come I don't have a
darkness.
copy of that song?
Yeah, I don't know if you have a copy of that, but yes, I wrote that song, and it became a sort of an anthem of Numfrill in later years.
Okay. How about you, Justine? How do you feel about the role of art? Is it to illuminate a particular issue, topic, or heartache, or is it to distract us from realities of life?
Yeah, I like how you stated, no, those are like two opposite ends of the spectrum. On
Mm,
one side, art can be used to distract yourself from the heartaches, from the
mm,
difficult times, from the reality of whatever is uncomfortable in life. But on the other hand, or on the other side of the spectrum, it's also there to shed light into the things that we're supposed to see, the things that numbers cannot show, mga
mm,
statistics cannot show, things that are beyond our immediate circle, our realm. So I don't think, JK, that it's one or the other.
okay.
I actually don't think that it's like a black and white thing
Mm-hmm.
that it's only used for either this or that. I think there's that gray area in which it operates, and it can be for both.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the greater purpose of art is really to reflect and to provoke. So it should hold a mirror to reality, to expose mga truths, to question mga flaws in society, and so that we can be inspired to imagine something that's better ba,
Mm,
or to shed light into what is unspoken, whether it be the good or the bad, the
mm,
unspoken joy, the unspoken sadness, resistance, whatever it is that could be ignored. So I think to summarize my answer, although it can be used to sometimes distract, ultimately its use is to help us reflect, or its truest role is to awaken something in us.
mm. And I think the art form in itself is beautiful because you don't have to be direct. You know what I mean? You don't have to be confrontational.
Mm,
You know what I mean? Pwede lang ka,
that's right.
you make it seem
Subtle.
flowery or like a metaphor, or
Mm,
maybe like a analogy or whatnot, right? It doesn't have to be confrontational, but if the oppressed, for example, listen to it and hear it, they know that they're talking about them, for example, right? Or if people are aware of a certain injustice, right, in society, then and you sing about it, but you cloak it with words
mm,
that may not seem directly attacking at that particular institution or person, then it becomes, in fact, it becomes timeless because if there's
yeah,
one thing we know, injustice has been around for a long, long time. There's always the oppressor and the oppressed. That's always been like a fact of life. We would want it to disappear, right? But it's just there all the time.
Yeah, and I think that's what the elements of art are for. I think when you state a message very plainly, more often than not, it people will receive it also very plainly. So
Mm,
there's no room for interpretation, there's no
mm,
room for appreciation for
yeah,
the other elements that make that message beautiful. And
yeah.
so in the way that you said, no, when you mentioned Jose Rizal earlier,
Mm,
Jose Rizal could have straight up just wrote articles.
mm,
Like he didn't need to write a freaking book,
okay.
right? He didn't make it creative in that way. He could have just wrote articles
Mm,
about how the Spanish are abusing us,
mm,
how we should rise up, how resistance should be a thing.
mm,
But no, he had a different approach, and he tried to go through the appeal of creativity, helping people imagine, and somehow, I think that's also the power of the elements of art. Like in the sense, as a writer, making use of metaphors and
mm,
other what are they called? Like similes,
mm,
metaphors. I forgot those are
mm.
figures of speech.
Hyperboles, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
using figures of speech as an element in art,
Mm,
especially as a writer, songwriter, or a writer of novels, is super important because it leaves room for interpretation, and at the same time it appeals to the audience more. Okay, you're not just telling them, like giving them the message straight up, but it gives them to be creative and understand. Oh wait, oh maybe they meant this, maybe they meant that, or maybe they're talking about this. So I feel like it sticks with them more, keeps them more engaged.
oh, do you have anything to add to that, Mel?
I totally agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Mel, naghisgot ka, Mel, earlier nga you wanted to talk about speaking of artists ba, which I who I actually love and had the pleasure of seeing many times over live, and I had a pleasure of
Wow.
not only listening to about 2 feet away because we were in a small room, but also had a chance to interview. Of course, I'm talking about Kate Torralba. We had an episode with her in our boxed in show, and I was able to talk to her and interview her for hours on end, and also listen to her perform. And I heard she's representing Cebu in the global stage. Tell us about it, Mel. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I read an article's Billboard, Philippines, that Kate Torralba is going to be performing in the first ever music mix. That's MEX is MEX, no?
Okay.
On June 19 in Jardín Jacarandas in Mexico
Wow.
City.
Okay.
So she's not just representing Cebu; she's actually representing the Philippines, no?
Mm,
And you've met Kate, right? And she's a
absolutely.
good songwriter.
Yeah.
And just a little bit of information. She used to be my student in UP
Wow.
Lahog.
Oh, okay.
No,
What subject was this, Mel? Polsai?
I was teaching negotiable instruments law, business laws,
Okay. Okay.
and she was a member of a band before.
Okay.
No, in the 90s, I played her song in New 107.
Hard
She had a
candy.
rap band
Hard
before.
candy.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
the one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then eventually she became a fashionista, right?
Yeah.
She became a fashion designer, and I didn't realize that she was very serious with her music, and she has produced one album, and will soon release another album.
Hopefully, yeah, because
Uh,
I've been
here.
asking her to make a new album. She
Oh, you were the one.
yeah, she used to be a fashion designer for the Stars. I
That's
know,
right.
and there were a lot of big celebrities who had done her, who she did clothes for, right? But I asked her about that, and she said, nga murag grabe kuno kayang stress levels kuno sa fashion industry, and she just wanted to make music instead.
And a few people would know that Kate Torralba is the daughter of the late Choi Torralba,
Yeah,
one of the fiery broadcasters
yeah.
of Cebu in the past.
Magkayo-kayo gin ang baba ni Choi gid pirmi, Mel.
Yeah. So that's the latest thing that I read about.
You know
We're talking about going global, right?
correct,
And
correct.
Kate,
So how's that?
going global.
How's that? It's a Mexican. It is in Mexico, not New Mexico in the United States, right? But Mexico, the country, right?
Right.
Right. So unsa man ni siya, like
Kwan, I think it's
what is the event about, and how I'm trying to figure out where to place Kate Torralba in a Mexican themed concert, or is it a Mexican theme or not?
it's actually not it's not about the Mexican music,
Okay.
but rather it's a gathering of musicians of different cultures,
Mhm.
um, and then performing their songs before other artists. So it's like world music, actually.
So
So
when you say world music, you mean music of the world, because world music in and of itself is a genre too, right? You're not talking about
That's
that.
right.
So it's a music of the world. So that should be very interesting, right? To be able to
That's
see
right.
how this universal art form that we call music is being interpreted all over the world. That must be really, really fascinating. I've never actually been to an event such as that. Have you ever been to an event such as that? The music of the world is being represented. How about you, Justin? Have you ever been to an event like that? The world music is being represented.
No, I've not actually been to like any sort of event like that.
Mm.
Na world music is being supported. I meant like it's an avenue for all artists from
Mm.
all over the world.
Mm.
I have watched though like some performances, some videos, like maybe like during the pandemic, there were a lot of these concerts that were done online.
Mhm.
They would remotely like have artists perform like in
Mm.
their own houses or something like that. I
Mm.
don't even remember which specific um show that was, or what kind of concert that was, but that's the closest I've gotten to anything like that.
Ikaw, Mel, have you ever been to a music
Very close
festival
here sa,
nga?
sa where I live in Hamilton.
Okay.
There has always been a WOMAD. That's the World Music Artist concert. It's a concert which happens in different parts of the world, but it's been happening here regularly in New Zealand.
Okay.
And artists, but this is world music, the genre itself, right? Wherein people like reggae artists, Mexican artists and African artists, etc. They gather together and share their music.
Mm.
But yeah, so it's happening here in New Zealand, but I haven't been in that uh, event yet.
Mm.
Yeah,
Uh,
hopefully maybe we can organize something like that,
mm.
Jiggy. That would be cool.
Well,
If you have
there is an event that I'm looking at right now. It's called Fête de la Musique. Are you familiar with
Yes,
that?
yes,
I'm looking
yeah.
at it rather. It's happening this June 21, and it has different genres, different artists. There's even DJs and all of that stuff. This is probably the closest we can get to.
Yeah, actually, Jiggy,
Yeah.
that's actually like that's a world music.
Okay.
Actually, I mean, but not world music, the genre,
Mm.
but gathering of different artists,
Yeah.
and that's not only happening here in the Philippines,
Mm.
but it's actually I think it started in France, no?
Correct. Yeah.
And they're doing that in other parts of the world.
Mm.
But it's the I think the French embassy is the one initiating it
Correct. Yeah.
and promoting it. Yes.
So this is actually very interesting, and I think that is a very powerful concert, right? To be able to sit down and get a cross section of unsa man gyud ay mga kantas o bang mga nasod. You know, France has always been known to be very progressive, very liberal, very open to new ideas, right? And you know, we all know what happened in the Olympics, di ba nga? Medyo controversial man ito ilahang mga performances, di ba?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I think that was a testament of their openness to new ideas, and I think an event such as this is good to be able to see how the world does art too, right? Don't you think so too, Kaning Justin? Do you think being able to see how the world does your art form, which is music, in radically different ways is an eye opener and is good for society?
Yeah, I think it's really important that we look at music or any art form through different lens,
Mm.
different cultural lens,
Mhm.
and not just focus on how our local artists interpret or make a certain type of art. It's
Mm.
important that we expose ourselves also with themes that may exist in other countries,
Yeah.
but not. And I think that's one of the reasons why, for example, hip hop became so popular in the Philippines. No, although hip hop started as a movement uh, to liberate the black community in the United States. Kita, we don't have that problem, man,
Mm.
because we don't have that race entirely here. It's a minority in our country. But then it was able to be something that's appreciated in the Philippines. No, hip hop also became big here. We have a lot of hip hop artists that grew. So that's a clear example to me as how um, art forms in a different country, even if it applies to their country, can be appreciated. It can be something that's appreciated
Mm.
and so applied in our country. So we need to expose ourselves to that, even though we think na ng problema, we don't have their problems,
Mhm.
not an art form or the way that they show their art is a bit too bold for our culture or the way that they do their art is really different from how we do our art. There's nothing wrong with exposing yourself to that, learning about it, because you'll see so much beauty in that, and there's so much to appreciate also
Mm.
in what we can offer that we don't have.
Yeah, you know, like R&B, for example, hip hop and hip hop to be more specific. What do you mean when you said we don't have that problem? Because we have inequality in our Philippine
Yeah.
society. That is a constant problem that we are all facing, and the way the African Americans dealt with inequality was through their music, right? And I think that's one of the reasons why it was easily adapted by the Filipinos, because we were actually in reality, contrary to what you said, actually are suffering from inequality, right? Why would you say, Justine, that we don't have that problem when in fact there's always inequality anywhere?
Yeah, I don't mean inequality in general. No,
Okay.
I don't mean to make a sweeping statement that we've never had slavery or
No. I think R&B and hip hop was, especially hip hop,
Yeah.
was about inequality, right? Murag, the inequality, the opportunities, and all of that stuff.
what I mean is we don't have that problem necessarily having the problem of different race, such as African Americans
Okay,
in our
okay,
country
okay.
fight for their particular rights as colored people through
Mm.
their music. Uh, Different atong context. Although yes, colonialism very big problem in our
Yeah.
country for years. No, we also had to fight for our independence
Correct.
against.
Yeah, and there were two races, right? Before the colonizers and the colonized, right? And in fact, diba, they looked at us as what was the word that they used to describe locals? Mel, Indio, ba to?
Indio,
Indio, diba?
Indio,
Indio,
Indio.
diba?
And
So,
there's a
Yeah.
thought of being inferior to them. But
mm,
what I meant was like that in particular, like African Americans,
mm,
that issue. But I understand what you mean. We also have our own form of slavery that
mm,
we had to deal with,
mm-hmm,
no? But the reality of it also is that we didn't start hip hop. Hip
mm,
hop didn't start in the Philippines. No,
correct.
it
Yeah,
was something
Yeah.
we adopted. Yeah.
we adapted. Yeah.
Mm,
So that's an example of how beautiful it is when we expose ourselves to cultures of other countries, how they do their art, and then
mm.
we can also take a piece of what's beautiful in their country and
Correct.
apply
Yeah,
it.
absolutely.
As you
So
mentioned,
so I think what has happened is that like hip hop was an rhythmic American poetry rap was adopted by the Filipinos because I think it's a way of them to express themselves in sa ilang gibati isa no and I think I've heard some of the local artists hip hop artists actually commenting on social issues.
Mm-hmm,
This in the same way that reggae was also which is from Jamaica
mm-hmm,
was also embraced by Filipino artists, di ba?
mm-hmm,
Quite a number of Bisaya artists are into reggae as well, and it's another way of them to express themselves in relation to their art and to what they feel about society.
mm-hmm.
yeah, that's why Sir Mel and Jiggy, I'm really proud when we have our own artists also that are doing the reverse. It's kind of the same thing, but on the other end, like putting our Filipino flavor or making clear the Filipino identity in our music, and then other people in other countries start to appreciate it now. So
Mm.
it's the other way around. It's not that we're adapting something from other countries, but now foreigners like what we have, and they notice that distinct sound, for example. So I'm very proud to talk about this because when I used to teach contemporary art in Ateneo de Cebu, we would really tackle a lot of social issues and contemporary artists. And one notable Filipino artist would be there's this group called um, they're under Viva. I forgot what they're called. Hold on. They had a song called Maharani, and it's
Mhm.
basically a song that makes use of traditional Filipino instruments, and it's also like a remix of um, a famous Filipino dance that has to do like with the movement of birds. It's a traditional indigenous dance. Nga. They were able to make a spin-off of it, but and it was widely recognized around the world. A lot of people appreciated that challenge on TikTok. You just find this group.
Which
Alamat.
is Alamat, yeah. Which is also like SB19, right? If you listen to their songs, it's actually a Filipino group adapting the K-pop, right? But if you try to listen to some of the songs, just like Alamat, they have incorporated ethnic instruments,
Sure.
indigenous instruments into their music. So, katong giingon ni Justin nga, we try to incorporate our being Filipino into what is foreign is something which is noteworthy, no? And people do from outside notice that.
Yeah, I like it when it's the other way around, Sir Melba. Nga, murag there's something distinct about our culture and our music that
Mm.
foreigners start to notice and start to appreciate. In fact, there's this other group also, Sir Melba. You know, it's usually the opposite. Nga. Filipino groups would make a cover song of K-pop songs, right? Pero there's
Mhm.
a time in a mall, and then I was so surprised to hear a Korean version of a famous Filipino song. So I'm sure you and Jig are familiar with the song Sumayaw Sumunod.
Mm.
Sumayaw.
VST,
VST. Yeah.
VST and Company.
That's the original artist, sir, no?
Mm.
BST and
Mm.
Company.
Mm.
Mm.
There's a famous K-pop group that covered that. So it's the first time that it's the opposite. There's this group called Horizon, but that's spelled as HOR70N.
Mm.
It's a Korean group, but to somehow also gain fans in the Philippines and to show appreciation for their Filipino fans, they made a Korean version to Sumayaw Sumunod.
Mm.
And it was so weird for me to hear that because like I knew the song immediately. It's a P-pop song. But it was weird. Wala ko kasabot sa lyrics ba? Kay Korean ang lyrics. So it's nice to see that the tables have turned. It's no longer that we are making Tagalog versions to existing Korean songs or English versions to their songs. But now even the foreigners are making our songs their own. I'm so proud of that. And I look forward to more artists doing that too. Malay mo, some Korean artists, Chinese artists, Japanese will make like, I don't know, Korean, Japanese versions of songs from Max Urban or other Cebuano, kind of notable Visayan artists. And I
Yeah.
hope that happens.
Yeah.
They will cover Butiki.
That's actually a great idea, Sir Mel. That would be really fun.
That sounds like a good idea. And
You know
I,
that,
I don't even understand that.
Regine,
I don't even understand what butiki is.
do you know that Regine Velasquez has a version of that?
Oh, really? No.
Oh,
Eh,
yes. You should see that. And she made it into a bit of jazzy. Boutique, ke. So you listen to that, and there's no actually when asked, he
Love
was
that.
asked, Yoyo Villami was asked what it means. He says, "I don't know what it means."
Oh my goodness. The artist
He just,
himself,
he just made up some words.
even the
That's
artist
it.
himself doesn't understand, no? And I like songs like that aren't too serious, but are also so famous and popular within our locality. That I think that reflects our humor, man said good Sir Melba. Something about
Yeah,
Cebuanos, very humorous. Like we don't take ourselves too seriously.
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah,
Even though
But
that's what I think that's part of who we are as
yeah,
artists, right? And we don't really take
the-
ourselves too
that's
seriously.
that's true because before in the 60s 70s ang Bisaya were always known to be making novelty songs.
Mm.
We were identified with Yuyi Villami and Max Orban,
Correct, yeah.
and that's why in the 70s and 80s and even 90s they thought that Bisaya musicians can only sing novelty
Mm.
songs. But we have proven them wrong, no?
Mm.
Because nowadays people from Manila are coming here to see that we have the artists here come perform in different genres,
Mm.
no?
Mm.
And
yeah,
that's what makes Cebu really a sort of a good field, no, where nobody dictates on what music you should be singing,
Mm.
diba? Or what genre. So that's why we have so many different artists and different genres in Cebu.
yeah, I agree with that, and hope it's just a budding, more nest ba of so many of
That's
these
right.
artists that are just waiting for platforms sometimes to have the songs played. Oh, Nasha, guys, all our listeners, we would always encourage you at 105.1 TMC, especially sa top of the morning. If you have songs, if you guys are songwriters, and then it doesn't matter if it's in Bisaya or English, and you're looking for a place to have your songs played, submit your songs, message us, give us a message on our Facebook page, join us on our live stream, and also give us your song requests. What
Mhm.
songs from Cebuano or Bisaya artists that you want to hear? Because that's what our station is for. We really want to champion local music.
Yeah.
Help it go.
Yeah, express yourself, and hopefully you expand your expression, not just in what then it's inside you or what's in front of you, but also the world at large, right? I mean, there are so many things that we need to put a spotlight on, di ba? And for example, si katapitang Tiny Desk concert winner si Ruby Ibarra. She is from Tacloban, but she's Filipino, and she's also seeing immigration as a serious problem. So she writes about immigration, right? And
Right.
that's what we should do too here in our neck of the woods. There's so many things that need to put a spotlight on that people are putting under the rug, and I think artists have a unique position of being able to make other people care about such particular issues, especially the young ones, di ba? Importante magugay because whether we like it or not, parang batanon pata, we are kind of always looking at ourselves. I would even say kanang adolescence is kind of like a time when we're kind of still don't know what we are. We don't know our place in the world, so we're always looking at ourselves. We're kind of in a way, pardon me for the word, but kind of selfish, right? And if we have artists who show put the spotlight on what we should care about, and I think we become less focused on ourselves and look at other things to outside of our surroundings, of our barangay, of our city, of our country.
Amen.
Amen to that. Mel, dagang salamat Mel. Naintriga gid ko tong imong gihisgot da nga naa version si Regine Velasquez aning kaning Butchiki.
You go to YouTube and you will discover it.
Okay, I'll play that next. Justin, anything else you'd like to add, Justin?
Hi, Mel.
Will you be making a song about war or
Yeah, no,
or anything like that?
yeah, it's either I'd make a song about inequality or something as unserious as Butchiki.
Okay.
Now that I'm throwing into my bank, you
Yeah.
know?
See, Kuya Magic is actually here. Say hi to Kuya Magic, you guys.
What's up, everybody? Hi, Justin.
Hello.
Hey,
Hey,
Mel.
Magic. How are you?
Love the music in the morning on a Sunday, right?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mel, nice.
Thank you so much, Jiggy.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, all the way from New Zealand, Mel Libre. And Mel, ang atong umaabot nga Biorig episodes, can you tell us what to expect? Go ahead.
Oh, this coming, the next one is a lot of new songs, and of course, the cantas, I'm featuring, of course, the song of Ferdinand Aragon.
Okay.
A very nice song called "1,000 Days." You played it, and it's a beautiful song, and it's the Love Asni for this episode.
Okay. And then when does it happen? When can we hear your show here if we play it correctly?
Yeah,
What time of the week do we play it?
Kia ora. Listen to Be Ori Global every Thursday at 6 a.m. and replays at 8 a.m. on Sundays. My name is Freemel.
Minaw ta ha? No.
Minata ha?
O ano yung kapilang minaw ta? Kalimutan.
Thank you so much, Jiggy.
Okay, thank you so much. Justin, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, let's play this song from Regine Velasquez, shall we?
Okay, let's go. Butchiki.
But before I let you go, Justin, we have a special guest. Is it today or tomorrow?
Yeah, we've got a special guest tomorrow.
Okay, who's it gonna be tomorrow?
Tomorrow we've got the president of the biggest hydroponic farm in Cebu. So ilang hydroponic farm is in Sogod. This is Good Sun Hydroponic Farms Group. So they're
Okay.
gonna be talking about their mission to support nutrition-based feeding programs in the Philippines. So I think it's very timely with our topic of social justice, and this is really a topic on innovation and how karon it's cool, no? How there's technology that we don't need to grow plants anymore with soil, and there's a way to do.
I'm curious, but one of my initial reactions to this particular technology, but not just because of you, but because I've heard about this for a long time, is we don't have enough land in this country. We don't have enough land. Why do we need to do that? I mean, like I can understand places with less land, diba? But don't we have like an enormous amount of land that we can use for agriculture? Aren't we like an agricultural city?
Based on my
Island?
very limited research on this now, what makes it sustainable is the fact that the Philippines is very susceptible to a lot of bagyo, mga typhoons, and so the kind of produce that we make, there's off seasons and on seasons, and so
Correct, yeah. I-rotate man nilang crops, yeah.
So with hydroponic farming, you can mitigate that in such a way that because it's like a different environment, you're simulating like an indoor environment, it's less susceptible to being destroyed sa mga typhoon. That's just one of the
So I guess you have to erect a strong, sturdy building, di ba? In that case, di ba? Because kung mag-ingon ka nga maapektuhan sila sa typhoons, for example, kung imong ibutangan na niya is also barong-barong lang sad, pareha ra gyapon kaning you'll suffer the same fate, di ba, as normal farming. Maguba ra gyapon ang imuhang structure. So importante siguro nga ang ilahang building yun siya. So I think this requires huge investment kay building na gud imong i-erect go, dili na magud basta-basta lang weak ng materials, di ba? So I guess we'll talk about that some more later on this Thursday, tomorrow. What time will we start our conversation? Justin?
That's 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. tomorrow.
Okay.
So join us. Got questions about that industry.
Okay. The hydroponic, the largest hydroponic plantation in the world,
In Cebu.
in Cebu, which is actually located in Bugo. Sakto ko, Sugod.
Sogod.
Sa Sogod.
Yeah, that's right. In
Oh.
Sogod.
Okay, can't wait for that. Let's listen to this next song together, which is highly recommended by Mel Libre, the Regine Velasquez version of a Yo-Yo Villame original, Butchikik.